Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the second installment of Black Theater Girl Magic's AMA series. Today's AMA will be with Claire Lopez and Jordan Woods Robinson of Book from Tape Studios.
Howdy.
They have so great. Hi.
Sorry.
So they have so graciously agreed to spend some time with us to talk through the wide world of self-taping, which is especially relevant in the COVID-19 area. Self-taping and submissions have quickly become the new normal for performers. And a lot of us may have realized just how much we don't know about this process. So with that being said, let's welcome our featured guests for this AMA broadcast, Jordan Woods Robinson and Claire Lopez of Book from Tape Studios. Now, if you have any questions throughout the broadcast, please type in the comments on either of the live streams so that we can direct them to our guests for them to answer them for you. All right, Claire and Jordan, take it away.
Thank you for having us.
Of course.
Yeah, thank you. It's so good to be here.
Yeah. Let's talk self-tape. So yes, as Kyla said, this is an environment where we've got more and more need for self-taping, and lots of people are finding their own self-tapes in their own houses. And we here at Book from Tape have, Claire and I are in two of our studios right now where we're in our self-taping setup. But it's crucial that everybody has that environment in their space right now, where if you have a tight turnaround, or if you have an immunocompromised person in your household and you can't travel outside of the house, if the situation just doesn't allow you to maybe our schedule's full or someone else's schedule is full. And we think it's very important, and something that Claire and I have been dedicating a lot of our time to helping folks getting a self-tape set up into their house. And how do you do that? And what are the most important things to focus on? And what we're hoping to talk about today is coming down to the technical elements of what it is that you're looking for, framing and eye lines and things like that, talking about lighting for a little while. And then also we might dabble into sound and any of those other little features that can really help take a self-tape to the next level. Claire, would you like to kick us off? Would you like to talk? Would you like to introduce yourself? I didn't introduce myself.
Yes. Okay. So a little smidgens about us. Okay. So Jordan Woods Robinson is what we call him, the head honcho at Book from Tape. He's the founder and owner of the studio. He's what brought this beautiful incarnation to life, and is an incredible working SAG-AFTRA working actor, and has been working in the Atlanta market and New York City market, and here, and we're so grateful to be collaborating together. And I am the Director of Education and Outreach here at Book from Tape Acting Studio, and I myself am a transplant into the Orlando area and grew up in California, and have been working kind of all across the country and the world in some cases, working as an actor both in theater and in film, and I'm also very grateful to be here. But yeah, we want to kind of start with, there is we have a bunch of different like blog posts that we're going to kind of be piecing through, but the first one that we're going to start with is this, like, how to build your self-tape setup at home. And what we really want to focus on is what are the ideal things that we're looking for in our self-tapes? Like, if budget were no issue, like what is the ideal that we're aiming for, and then how can we find and troubleshoot our best variation of that with what you got? Because we also realize that in our current climate that we don't always necessarily have the budget and means to get the beautiful setups that Jordan and I have here in the studio. So we're just trying to see what is the target we're aiming for, and then how can we kind of best serve what you got with what you got going on at home. So let me bring this up real quick. But the three main goals for us when it comes to self-taping is that we want to know that we can see you and hear you clearly, right? Those are the main. You've got video, you've got audio, so we got to make sure both of those components are working. And then the second piece is that nothing in your background, in your sound or your lights or anything else, is distracting us from the work. So there's a lot of like nitty gritty questions that kind of come into play when it comes to props or eye lines and movement, and a lot of that is like unpackable when you're in an on-camera class. But in a nutshell answer is, if it's not distracting us from the work, then it's good, go for it. And if it's something that's taking away from the storytelling, of the work. If it's just, if you're adding these crazy lighting and sound effects, if you're doing these things that now we don't actually know what's going on because we're so distracted, then we go, okay, that's a little too far. So those are kind of the three goals, that we can see you clearly lighting wise, your background, everything else. We can hear you clearly and there are no distractions, and that there's nothing else going on other than just beautiful acting. And that's what grabs our focus from the beginning. So
And
Jordan,
yes,
look at that.
no, you had a real question. I was going to say to Kyla, I hope that, if anyone has any questions, please, we want this to be a conversation because everyone's going through a slightly different experience with setting this up. Sometimes like you have a great setup, but the person who is reading with you is a non-actor. How do we figure that relationship out? How do we help guide them to reading with us in a way that we feel supported? Because your reader can be a distraction as well, right?
Absolutely, yes.
So going through, does an actor need a green screen? Question from Instagram. An actor does not need a green screen. And actually, this is a great place to start. Green screens and those chroma key blue, where like it's, we all know that blue where it's like way darker than this. It's like, it's just that crazy. These are colors that were selected by the film industry because they don't naturally exist in nature. Like, they want to find these bright blue and these bright green that they can film their actors in front of it and then put in a computer program that will pull that color out of the video so that they can replace it with anything else that they want. And so for an actor to have a green screen, actually what you see Claire and myself in front of, these are industry standards. A light blue, like a robin eggshell blue, or a light gray works great with any skin tone. And it allows for you to pop. These are not colors that will blend with anyone's skin tone. And so it allows you to stick out and to be the feature, thus allowing it to blend in a little bit more, without being distracting. The bright green, the green screen is just distracting. And it used to be an industry standard along with the chroma key blue in a lot of self-taping or a lot of taping studios, but it's not anymore. So there are some great collapsible backdrops you can find on Amazon or other places. We have some links on our blog. We also, I've just painted walls the right color before. What you're looking at right now in our studio is actually a paper backdrop. You don't need to go do that. That is a next level investment. But it allows us to change the color of the wall really easily and to adjust it depending on the project we're shooting for.
Yeah. Nice. And I love that this first question actually launched us into our first topic, which is background, because I just posted in the chat on the YouTube where everyone's watching live on YouTube. I just posted the link, but background is the first piece that we're going to talk about, and I love unpacking all of that. But I wanted to just, in a nutshell, give you a couple quick thoughts about what to avoid or what to look for, because obviously not everyone can invest in the paper backdrop or wants to buy a collapsible one. So what we're looking for generally is a blank colored wall with no distractions. So if you've got a wall, you can take off all the frames and use that. I have it set up where in a space I was staying with friends, I would just take the frame off and I would stand right in front of the nail so you couldn't see the nail, and then it was fine. And I would like frame out the light switch, and there's ways to do it, right? White as a wall color goes isn't preferable because it tends to wash a lot of people out or be really stark when it comes to white balancing and saturation and things like that. So literally any other color is better. But at the end of the day, it's really what looks best for you and your skin tone and your coloring and your hair color. I know folks who are like really fair skinned and blonde haired and blue eyed, and it's just like, if you go in front of a white wall, it's just a disaster. But I know folks who found backdrops that are slightly purpley or blue, but they're not the chroma key blue. They're actually like this like slate color. So you absolutely can play outside of these gray and pale blues that we have, as long as it works for you, and you can find it in a paint can that's flat and not shiny. That's really important. Mm-hmm. Or in a nutshell, like people use bed sheets or curtains, and that's totally okay. You want to aim for avoiding the wrinkles if possible. So if you can take a wall and staple it or do what you got to do to destroy a bed sheet and get it really taut and avoid the wrinkles or steam it, great. Same with a curtain. But in a nutshell, a curtain, even with the wrinkles, is still better than like the chaos of a bedroom with all kinds of things going on and your toddler running through and whatever it is. So you kind of do the best that you can. But in general, we're just looking at avoiding those wrinkles, avoiding having windows behind you. We'll get into lighting here in a second, but we want to make sure wherever the light is coming at, we want it going at your face and not behind you, because it'll change how you look if that light's coming from behind. And that you've got some space to move, that you're not going to run into a bed or a bookcase or something in the process. You've got, a foot or two behind. And that.
Sorry, Claire. Can I jump in right there?
Yeah.
This is something that I'd like to just we're talking about specifically about background right now, but what's also incredibly important with this is that you're not directly up to your background, right? That you have that space. Look, you would never know it from watching, like from here, you don't really know how far away that wall is. But watch, I've got 4 feet between where I just was and the back wall. And that allows for you to pop off the wall. It allows for there to be no shadows. There's no chance of shadows. And it gives you room to move. Like, I mean, this is Black theater girl magic. Like, I assume a lot of folks are working in theatrical settings, right? And so when you go to translate that performance into an on-camera environment, like, not less has to change than you think, right? We still want you to be able to have this freedom to move. We still want you to be able to explore and to put it into your body and to ground yourself that way. It's just that now the camera is picking you up. We're no longer reaching a 1,000-seat theater. You're just talking to one person and they're right there for you. But there are, certain times there will be thoughts that travel through saying, like, just plant yourself and don't do anything, and you're moving too much. And like, we've all heard those, either those actual notes, or we've heard other people talking about them, or we've heard them as, ooh, watch out for those notes. But in essence, what we really want to see is like you existing, and the camera will capture that. So give yourself that room. And it's kind of ironic that I'm saying this, because now we're in these like little compartmentalized, like, vertical spaces. But normally we would have this entire, I would have a much larger room or a world in which to move. Did we just lose Kyla?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Okay, yeah, we can hear you. Okay.
I don't know why I'm not showing up anymore.
You were too beautiful. You broke the camera.
Oh, stop it.
That's
you flatter me.
I'm going to go with that.
Yeah. Okay.
I'll take it.
I'm going to add, while we're figuring that out, another quick note, because we're talking about backgrounds. But when it comes to wardrobe, we're not going to go too crazy about it, because I think wardrobe can be very subjective. But in general, when we're thinking about backgrounds and self-tapes, we just want a color that is different than the color of your background when you're looking at clothing to wear. And obviously, hopefully different than the color of your hair, if possible, as well. Because if you're in a white shirt against a white wall and you're fair skinned, then you just become this floating pair of eyes. And we want to be able to really see you and to pop. And we want you to be the star of the shot, not the bright color wall or whatever. So that's another thing to think about, is just making sure that your wardrobe is something that contrasts what your background is, so that you don't blend in. Jordan's got a nice V-neck, and I do too, and we're both popping from our background, so we're sporting that. But we can shift over now into framing. Jordan, do you want to talk about what the ideal framing is and what to think about when it comes to framing your self-tape?
So first things first is always just check the breakdown, because each casting director is going to have a different standard that they're looking for. Some people prefer for, well, I'll go through, unless it's otherwise specified, ideal framing. We're taking over. We just got a wider frame. Ideal framing is about a 1/2 inch to 1 inch above the top of your head to about top of bust or armpit level, right? Sometimes you might read it and it might say like just below the shoulder. Everybody says it slightly differently, but what I'm in right now is actually, and what Claire's in right now, this is actually the ideal framing for a film and TV audition. And then, so if they don't specify anything, this is what you should go for. It offers just enough closeness that that the camera sees every single thought. And it also, if we were in the wider framing, it also means that I have just enough movement where I can I can live, I can breathe in this environment as well. There are some casting sessions that might ask you to be top of head to like waist or natural waist. And let me see if I'm on my laptop right now. This is not my camera, but then that might look a little something closer to this. See? So it's still about the same amount of distance, still about an inch above the top of head. But now here's my belly button, here's my waist. And now this would be very common if you're doing a commercial, or if you're doing a musical theater audition, or a theater audition, something where you would normally, oh my gosh, look, this, yes, this is it. Love it. Thank you for the adjustment. This is the framing. So normally we'd be here, and this is what you'd be going for. This is what your self-tape would look like. And then for like the half body, we'd be coming here. And now this allows me to sing a song, to have a larger theatrical presence, where normally there'd be a director and the casting team on the side of another desk, and they're watching everything about me. And then, so you're just letting them see more of your body. And then of course, I have to pull my pants down because I have, oh my, not my pants. They were up like this. So I'm gonna pull them down. I'm not gonna pull my pants down. All right, keeping it classy. But whenever you can go back for your full body, try to get as much of yourself as possible. What they're looking for is body type. They just want to get a better sense of you. And not everyone asks for a full body, but when they do, just try to zoom out as much as possible. Get from top of head down to knees, or whatever you can get in your space, and that'll be enough. So that's basic framing 101 in a nutshell. Eye lines, would that be a good thing to jump into next, Claire?
Yeah. I don't know if we wanted to touch on things to avoid with it, or if we're good or not, but
go for it. Yeah.
Framing. Yeah. So real quick, things to avoid: having your phone be vertical unless you're there to just get the full body shot. You can totally get the full body shot vertical. It's not a big deal. But always, forever and ever, amen, be horizontal when you're setting up your framing. Mm-hmm. Avoiding being too wide, seeing all this like head space, and we want your face, your eyeball to be the focus. Mm-hmm. Being too tight against the wall, or if you're so close to the camera that you're like, I can't move because if I breathe, even you get this distortion with the camera. And then also be really careful that if you're using a cell phone, be aware that you want to get your framing from the distance, for the most part, of your camera to your body. That if you go really wide and try to manually zoom in your camera, you get a lot of distortion. Even on nice 4K iPhones, you're going to get a lot of distortion the more you zoom. So really, if nothing else, either let it be slightly wider and crop it in the edit, or just set the camera up close enough to be appropriate framing. Because unless you've got a great like high DSLR camera, that zoom function on your phone won't serve you so well. So I just wanted to pop those little quick things to avoid in your home setup, because that's something to think about.
And let's talk about lenses placement real fast, because this, more so than framing, this is the most crucial thing you should be focusing on, is that the lens. In this example, I'm assuming that you're filming on a smartphone. If you have a DSLR, if you have another kind of camera, then I'm just talking about like the main lens of the camera. Right. But having that lens be at eye level, or even slightly higher, maybe around eyebrow level, this is ideal. And when you have it at the right height, I'm going to try to provide an example. When you have it at the right height, it's going to look like this. And you're like, wait a minute, that's not the right framing. So then you're going to lower the camera to try to like make it work. But then that's not right. Don't lower the camera. Get that lens right there. And then rather than having it be flat on, tilt it in order to get the right framing. So now we were here, and I'm going to tilt that camera, and it's going to automatically adjust so that now we're in the right framing. Okay.
This is game-changing information.
Good, because yes, you look, it changes your perspective when we're looking at it from the wrong angle. If we're looking from underneath, you're going to see more nostrils. They're going to be like looking over, and whoever you're talking to looks like they're 8 feet tall because they're standing over the camera. If it's too high, then it'll actually make you look younger than you are, which might be what you're going for, but it also might not serve you. So same thing with lighting. We want everything to be right at eye level. So go for that, and once you get at the right level, then just tilt it until you get the right frame. Or, as Claire suggested, you can crop it in editing, and in order to like get that proper placement. I'm glad that was game changing.
Yeah,
That was.
amazing. Yeah, we forget about things like where to set the camera and all those details, and sometimes in an effort to get our framing, we forget, like we start screwing around with other stuff. So it's good to be mindful of that.
Yes.
You want to get into sound, Jordan?
Yeah, and actually, real fast before we go to that, because we're talking to a theater crowd also looking to translate their skills to film and TV. Claire and I are both theater folk, and that is what we are doing. We are looking to translate theatrical tools for on-camera auditions and for on-camera acting and for the on-camera actor. And so one thing is that when you're in the theatrical audition experience, you would normally be looking just over the audience's heads, right? Just over the director, so that they don't feel like they're involved and they feel like they can observe while still getting a great sense of who you are. How that translates on camera is that you want to look 2 to 3 inches to the side of the lens, not above, directly to the side of. It's going to feel kind of strange. You're going to feel like, oh, I want to be like 12 inches to the side. But look, I'm looking, you get little red marks from my glasses, ignore that. But right now I'm looking like 8 inches to the side of the camera. And do you see how like, it's almost like if I was talking to this person, it would almost look, you would almost have a hard time connecting with my side of the story. But it's only 8 inches to the side. So now I'm going to bring it back. I'm looking directly at camera. Now I'm going to look about 3 inches to the side. So now I'm just talking to someone that is just off camera. Like I'm almost talking directly into the lens, but I'm just slightly off. And it allows us the opportunity. And if I'm talking to one person here, I'm not going to talk to you. Okay. So 8 inches to the side of the camera. And do you see how like, I just heard my own delay. Did anyone else hear that? Yeah. Okay.
Just for a second.
Like, wow. I'm echoing. So one person's here, and then I'm going to talk to this. Oh, have you met my friend, John? This is Susie. Susie, John. It's very yeah. So I was just telling. Oh, you got to go. Okay, I'll see you later. And then you can send them off, and then you can come back to your friend here. But it's just a couple of inches difference. And once you find that sweet spot, that can open up the whole environment for you, because we're in this neutral background. We are tasked with being even more specific with what else is going on in the scene. Where are we? Where are the windows in the room? Where's the door to the room? Where, is the person you're talking to standing or sitting? All of that stuff. It seems obvious, but it can really make or break a self-tape audition or being on camera. A person who is fully grounded in their environment and the audition is coming out of that, versus someone who is showing up and being very invested in the scene, but not showing us the rest of the environment. So these are all just little ways to start to let that manifest in the world around you.
Yeah, I wanted to jump into along the lines of, we're kind of jumping along our little blog post about how you set up this self-tape setup at home. So we're kind of in body and eyeline. But along the lines of that, we kind of wanted to go over real quickly a couple of things to avoid when you're thinking about setting eye lines. So one thing is, like, we want to make sure we're never in profile. As Jordan said, that even looking a couple inches or 8 inches off, once you stop seeing one of my eyes, these are the money makers, these are the communicators, windows to the soul, and all that. So the moment we start turning like this, like, I'm not even in full profile, and there's already so much information you're losing. So if you ever get to the point where like, oh yeah, we've lost you. So the thing is, avoid profile and sheet those angles much tighter. You're never going to be in that 90-degree relationship. It's all going to be like sort of 45. Mm-hmm. Another trick is thinking about, if you're talking to more than one person, put them on either side of the camera. Don't put them in the same place. It could be really hard to distinguish what's happening in the scene. If you're, hi Joe, hi Sarah, and it looks like they're the same person.
Right.
We talked about this before, but avoid being totally backed up and close to your wall. Give yourself some space and some mobility. Make sure that you're centered. There's this thing in film and filmmaking that's called the rule of thirds, and there's like all of this artistic theology around, like, be in the third, and this is how you work your angles. And it's like, that's beautiful, but we're not making a film, we're making a self-tape. So we want to put our bodies in the center of the frame. We want to take that focus. There might be occasions where you cheat left or right because of other environmental things, and that's okay, but we don't want to spend the bulk of our audition outside of frame, because then it's going to look like, well, why are you just randomly on one side? That's just bizarre. We want to take up that space.
Trying to aim to be center also allows you some wiggle room if impulsively you do need to step to the side for just a moment while this person is talking, and then you come back, right? It allows for us to just have a little more of that theatrical presence in our bodies.
Yeah. And I think the last thing to think about body in terms of position and placement is just thinking about making sure your body is available, and whatever that means to you. It's not necessarily, some people talk about whether or not you're supposed to sit or stand for auditions. A lot of the time we lean towards standing because your body is most available when you're standing. But there's lots of scenarios in which you're like, no, I would be sitting. I'm sitting in the scene. I'm sitting on the bed talking to my roommate, or it's intimate and I really want to have that sense of grounding. That's okay. But the most important thing is that your body is available. And I talk about it in terms of like, playing volleyball or some kind of sport where you have to have that sort of energized readiness, where if a ball comes at you, you can react. So as long as you have that readiness, or if you're someone who's like a choir girl like me, your choir teacher is like, you can't lean against the back of your chair. You have to sit on the edge of your seat so that you could like actually fully support your breath. And that's actually translates really nicely in self-taping too. It's like, I'm sitting in a chair, but you wouldn't be able to notice between Jordan, who's standing, and I'm sitting, because I'm sitting in this like energized, leaning forward way. And I'm not locking off my body. I'm not like sitting back with my arms crossed and all tangled and closed off. So that's another thing to think about when you're positioning yourself. There might be some scenes where there's some exceptions, or you play with the casualness or comfortableness of the character, but in general, we want our bodies to be available and energized. And so that body positioning really helps with that.
Yeah. Okay, that's a good place to pivot to some questions. We have a question from a Facebook user on colors to wear from Zoom. What are the best colors to wear from Zoom, or for Zoom, excuse me?
I think there are a couple different ways to answer that, Facebook user. But one thing is knowing what you're auditioning for. You know, just like if you're, I think most auditions on Zoom these days are going to be for commercial work. So continue to keep it bright. Continue to find those colors that pop, that have energy within them. And obviously vice versa, if you are auditioning for something that is a little bit darker or a little bit more character driven, or is a callback or something else, then trust whatever it is that you need to wear, whatever works with your skin tone, whatever isn't blending into the background. You can consider your Zoom audition and your callback to be the same as a self-tape. And the nice thing is you don't have to walk into a casting session and guess what their backdrop looks like. You know what it is because it's already in your space. So wear something that allows you to not blend in. And layers are usually helpful. Layers are usually good. Layers usually on camera just like somehow literally add layers to the character. I don't know how, but it does help. Try to avoid tight patterns because the camera might start to see them as like zigzaggy lines if they're too tight. But other than that, I'd say that there aren't any, you know, the best colors because you already wear them, because you've chosen them because you like how you look in them. And so stick with that.
Okay, and this is not a question, but this is a comment from Lynn Streeter Childress, who is our BTGM dramaturg, who says, Claire, well, she says, hi, Claire, Kyla, Claire, and Jordan. Claire, you are a celebrity here because my drama club did The Wizard of Oz that you wrote, and my son was in it, and he's watching with me and thinks you're cool. So
I love that so much. My heart is so happy. I was so excited to see that she's been working with all of you at Black Theater Grow Magic, and I was like, this is The World is Small, and I love it. So, okay, thanks.
Lynn is incredible. We love her. So if you're still watching, Lynn, you're amazing. Okay, we have a question from Instagram. Is it okay to use a teleprompter app for to record cold reads?
You want to take that one, Claire?
Yeah. It's yes and no. So it depends on what it's for. It depends on what your turnaround is. It depends on who the CD is. It depends on what kind of project it is. If you're auditioning for a one-liner co-star, you should be off book. Like, you should be off book. You should. Generally speaking, we want to start with the ideal scenario. Ideal scenario, you've done your preparation. You've researched what the project is, if it's for a play or theater that company, you've read the play or you've at least Googled it, you're familiar with the sides. You might have some cheat sheets here and there, but you're like, I'm pretty much like pretty darn close to off book, if not completely off book for an audition. With film and television, they really expect, unlike sometimes with theater, with film and television, a lot of the time we got our title book from tape because we noticed that a lot of people were booking roles directly from their self-tapes without any callbacks at all, without any in-person component. So in that scenario, they need to see somebody who is camera ready. Like, hey, and sometimes the turnaround is that fast. Sometimes it's like, I watched the tape on Wednesday and you're going to be on set on Thursday. So they cannot watch somebody who's reading their sides. They cannot watch somebody who's reading from a teleprompter. They need to know you got it. So in an ideal scenario, you've explored it so fully, you understand it so fully that you're off book and you're memorized. Even in an in-person scenario, a lot of times people might hold their sides just to have them because that's totally normal, but you would hold them out of frame. You could glance, sometimes it might work if you're a lawyer or something and you could reference them in a way that feels natural. It's okay. In general, we want to aim to be like really knowledgeable and really off book. All that said, if it is commercial copy, sometimes the shoot itself is going to be teleprompter, and that's the expectation. So it may not be a problem. I've also worked with actors who are like, who've done the Broadway circuit, who've come into tape with us and who are like, I got these sides an hour ago and I'm going to be on a flight, and so I need to tape this, and so we're telepromptering today. And so people do that, and it does happen. I don't think it's a thing to shoot for, but I do think if you're like, hey, I know I've got an hour to get this prepped and I've got the character that they've given me, it's not just a couple one-liners, it's paragraphs, and there's zero way I'm going to have the mental attention I need to just focus on memorizing, and I want to focus on character work, then yeah, use the teleprompter. But it also means you have to have some technique about how you read it so it doesn't look like your eyes are doing this the whole time. And it does mean you have to really be connected to relationship because you're looking at a screen and not a face and not a person. And there's a lot of technique that goes into that because there's so much more to acting than just like I said the words right. So
yes,
it's okay to use teleprompter appropriately, but y'all better have your craft like on point in terms of your connection, your relationship, and you have to paste over the teleprompter all of the facial reactions of your scene partner in every part that you're saying. So you're constantly still seeing a person while you're also seeing words.
And the rest of the environment, because if you're just staring at this one spot, then you're
not taking
out
on
99% of the rest of the world that's around you, right? So being able to still be comfortable to be able to walk away from just being glued to this the entire time.
Okay.
Hopefully that answered that. I know it's
that
kind of
does. That's a lot of information, but that's why we're here. So at this point, because I forgot to mention this in the very beginning, so Book from Tape Studios has actually come into this offering a giveaway to attendees, particularly, especially BTGM members who are interested in coaching services and sessions from Book from Tape. So we will be giving away 5 free 15-minute coaching sessions, but there is a caveat. We have questions now that we want to throw to you all. And there's no pressure if you don't know the answers, because that'll also help us, steer our conversation in a way that helps with these things. But the first question for a giveaway for a free 15-minute coaching session with Book from Tape is, what is standard framing for a self-tape? So please feel free to drop your answers and responses in the comments, and from there we'll be picking a winner. It is something that we've kind of already covered, so we're kind of quizzing you a little bit.
See how well you listen.
Right.
All right, and with that, we will also take another question from
Instagram.
All right, from Instagram. Every casting director like their self-tapes done a certain way, but are there any industry standards that we should absolutely know about?
Yeah. So yes, the industry standards really boil down to framing most importantly, which if I give the answer right now, we already talked about it, but if I give it right now, then everyone's just gonna be like, here's the ideal framing. But it's something with how I'm looking right now and how Claire is looking right now. This is standard. Unless testing app for something very specific, this is standard. And yeah, of course, like you already said, check the breakdown, because some people might, some casting directors want their files submitted in a very specific file name. They want it to be, some people want your last name first and then your first name. Some people want your first name and your last name together. Some people want them separated. Some people want your character included. Some people don't want character. And some people want it labeled as an MOV, which is a movie file, a QuickTime file. Some people want it labeled as an MP4. Both are completely industry standard, and both will work on any computer. So if you accidentally mess up and send it as one but not the other, what they ask for, then don't sweat it. They'll be okay. But these casting directors are looking at dozens, if not hundreds, of video files a day. And we can make sure that we are checking and dotting all of our I's and crossing all of our T's before we send it off to them, because they have a very specific filing system that they're using. And if we throw a wrench in that filing system, then we've at best made their day more difficult, where they have to go through and like find the files. And at worst, we've just lost our chance at auditioning, because our file won't even appear in their format that they're looking for, and they might accidentally miss it. They might not even open it. So making sure that you follow that is crucial.
Yeah.
What are some other standards, Claire?
I was going to say, I mean, in a nutshell, it's really follow instructions, because they change from audition to audition. So it's really important to really read all the fine print and see what you need to do. I think another one is thinking about how many takes you send. Some people assume that you can just send a lot of takes, and some people only send one. And it's important that a really important industry standard, regardless of what their preference is as casting director, is that if you're going to send more than one take, make sure it's truly a different take. If you send 2 takes and it's just like, this one I smile a little bit more, this one on the word yesterday I have this like sparkle thing, but otherwise they're exactly the same take, like don't do that. You are better off sending only 1 take than sending 2 takes of essentially the exact same thing. They're not going to watch it, or if they do, they're going to be really frustrated that you made them watch the same thing. So that's one of the standards I wanted to sort of highlight. I think this lighting thing, I kind of want to shift over into lighting a little bit, Jordan, so that we can do that before you, because Jordan has to leave us soon. So if you don't mind, Jordan, I want to talk a little bit about what industry standard lighting is. Generally, we say like we want to see this beautiful front light, natural light is ideal, but why don't you unpack a little bit more about what the ideal is in terms of light, and then we can unpack the do's and don'ts.
Well, before we go there, I just want to say that we actually have a winner for the very first giveaway.
Yay!
And that is going to be Troy Jackson, whose response to the question was a little above the head to below shoulder, or a little above the head to torso.
Yeah.
So
this. Great.
We agree that that is an acceptable, correct answer. So Troy, you have just won a free 15-minute coaching session with Book from Tape. So congrats.
Word. We will.
All right.
We'll get your information. Yeah.
Yes, we will.
And I'm going to transition to lighting, but I'm going to answer this question as though I'm at a presidential debate. And I'm going to go back for 1 second. I want to talk about the question right before it real fast, because there's one more industry standard that if they don't specify, the slate for a film and TV audition should be at the end of everything that you do. Don't put it first. That just takes more time away from us seeing you dropping into this story, right? Let us see that first, and then we'll get introduced to you, unless it's a commercial.
That is something I didn't know.
Yeah, and unless it's a commercial. And if you're doing a commercial, they want to see you first, and they want to see your body type first, and then you can go into the content. So those are industry standard as well.
Okay. Nice.
So back to one thing, lighting, and actually, let me give you a little tour of my setup that I'm in right now. So looking at my face, and this is important, y'all. If you wear glasses where they can reflect lights, you can take them and you can do 2 things. You can buy some fake glasses, like go to Costco, go to CVS, go to Walgreens, go to Walmart, buy some reading glasses that you like, take them home and pop the lenses out so that you just have frames now, because the camera can't tell the difference. It will still see you with glasses and it'll still add to the character. But there will be no reflection in your eyes. But if you need to wear your specific glasses, take the lenses, or sorry, take the arms and just tilt them up into your hairline about an inch or so. So it's not resting on my ear anymore. It's now above it. But when I turn back, the camera can't tell that they're different. And yet I would have to look all the way up here before I start to see any glare. It's sending all of the reflection back toward the ground rather than back at the camera. So it's a good little helpful tip. But let me give you an introduction to my studio space. So this is what I'm talking into right now. I've got my 2 softbox lights, and I do have a ring light. Now, ring lights are, some people love ring lights, some people don't like ring lights, and that's up to you. We don't use a ring light just by itself. We use it only in combination with other lighting in order to offer that more specific glow to the skin. So check this out real fast. I'm going to turn it off. Remember me like this. Hi. And then let me turn off this ring light. And this is me without it. Do you see how we can still see the lights coming on, but I'm not as present. I'm not as glowing as I would be if I had that extra light shining on me just from the very front. So it's a subtle thing, but it does make a difference. And so we use it in combination. I also have a hair light, which is back behind me at about 45 degrees. Now, Claire was saying earlier, don't stand in front of a window or anything. And that's totally true, because look at what happens when I stand in front of light. The camera is no longer looking at me, it's looking at the light, right? But this extra hair light here can just help separate me from that back wall just a little bit more. It's putting a little bit of shine on my shoulder. It's just helping me pop off from the back wall. And lastly, which I don't have set up right now, and I apologize, you'll have to take my word for it, is we normally have, oh, Claire has one behind her. She has a vignette light. So she has one that's just on the wall. It's just shining a glow. And now, Claire, go ahead and sit back down if you don't mind. And what it does is it disperses any shadows that are there, and it creates a little bit more glow effect behind her so that she can pop off even more. That way, it allows us to just completely forget about the wall altogether. By actually accentuating the wall, it allows us to forget about the wall, and it puts more emphasis on the talent. So this is standard. This is not standard, sorry. Do you need to go out and spend several $100s on lighting? Absolutely not. If you have a good double window that has soft light, and I don't mean like soft light means, diffused, not hitting you with the full force of the sun, but that the sun is somewhere else and the light is just streaming through the window, you're going to get beautiful self-tapes 100% of the time, except after dark, I suppose. But but you're going to get good self-tapes. And so use that natural light. You can't beat it. All of these soft boxes, everything else here, they're trying to replicate natural light. And most of the time they do a pretty dang good job, but it's not without investment. So if you have a natural light, if you have natural light that's on one side of your room and the natural light is hitting you here, then buy another soft box that'll just hit you from this side so that you're evening out the natural light with another soft box. But that is going to serve you as well. So, and we actually have a whole blog post about this. We have a blog post of 6 different ways to light your self-tape setup, including natural light.
I actually just put that in the comments on the Facebook broadcast. So great minds.
Yeah.
Yes.
If you want more information about how to light yourself, more information to supplement what Jordan was just saying and what Jordan and Claire were just saying and discussing and demonstrating, feel free to check out that link that we just dropped in the comments from the blog from Book from Tape called 6 Ways to Light a Self-Tape.
Awesome. And
I love it.
At this point, my friends, I need to request to bounce. I need to take off at 3. I have another obligation. I'm very sorry, but Claire's going to stick. Claire's going to answer any questions and continue continuing this conversation. So thank you so much for having me, Kyla, and Black Theater Girl Magic. We're big fans.
It was great having you with us, Jordan. Thank you so much for giving us the little sliver of time that you had. We know how busy you are, and especially again in the COVID era with self-taping being the thing. So thank you so much.
Thank you, y'all. Bye. Thank you.
Thanks, Jordan. I'm going to continue just like rolling out some of this background around lighting. So Jordan just like talked us through all of the ideal, right? All of the beautiful things that you could spend money on if money were no issue. But I want to kind of break it down into like your realistic home setup. The things that you're really looking for at the end of the day is that your face is not in shadow, your body is separated from the background, and that you're not washed out. That's really what we're aiming for. That whatever you're doing, however you're setting yourself up, you can use lamps from around your home. You can diffuse it with a bed sheet as long as you're mindful about like fire safety. Like there are things you can do in a nutshell that work just fine, as long as you're hitting those three goals of being able to see us clearly and not be in shadow and be separated. The thing to think about, as Jordan had said before, was just to make sure that your lights are at your eye level. So that it's not just your overhead. You're not relying on that overhead light. If you've got an overhead light, I think it's easier to just turn it off and put up some lamps than it would be to rely on your overhead light. And that you're not only relying on one light source, because that's where we find like, wow, this side of the face is in shadow and this side of the face is lit. We want to make sure that you've got more than one going. And then we're just keeping an eye on those shadows and making sure that we're not being washed out or distorted in any way. In our blog post that y'all have already shared about how to do your lighting, we also have some information about the gear that we use. So if you're interested in that, I know Mandy Jo John has posted, I know in the YouTube channel, like some of the gear that we use. So if you're interested in finding some of this gear for yourself, then that's available. And then there's, I think in one of our other blog posts, some stuff about apps that we use as well. So there's a lot of things that you can kind of dig around if you're interested in exploring all of the goodies we put together, that can help kind of deal with these different adjustments that you can make just using your cell phone and using these really user-friendly apps. So hopefully that's helpful.
Okay, well, now we have a question from Instagram.
Yeah,
what if
great.
we don't have any decent blank walls to hang a sheet from in our house?
I think, part of it is you can do things like take things off of walls, like if you've got stuff hanging. I know some people who will maybe they've got a wall of bookcases and they're like, wow, there are all these books and it's really busy. You can still, if you can use push pins or whatever, put something over it. Even a blanket sometimes works. It sometimes requires a little ingenuity. Some people use their garages because there's it's a lot easier to find like a wall that you can use. I also find that I really do like blankets though, because I feel like they tend to be more even in texture and you don't have to worry about wrinkles as much as long as they're not like quilted. So I think most of the time, at the end of the day, you're looking to what I call triage your setup. You're trying to look at going, okay, well, I have this blank wall, but the lighting is terrible and you can't see me. So I'm going to use this wall that might have a light switch in it and might have a couple of other things that are slightly distracting, but I know I'm going to look better. So I'm going to use that. Same with sound, where you go, okay, I know ideally I want to have sound that's not distracting and I'm not hearing stuff. And so the only time I can record is at night because the lawn care people are making really loud noise during the day. And now I'm at night and my lighting's not as good. So sometimes you have to kind of look at your life and go, okay, which is the lesser of two evils? And what is something that I can do that is sendable? And like most things in our industry, I know we're talking about like tech and self-tapes, but anything, whether it's the craft of acting or the business of acting, we're always getting better. We're always improving. It's not ever that like, okay, got it done. There's always ways you can upgrade as you go on, that you're like, okay, I have this good camera now, but now I really need to upgrade my sound. Or now I have this ring light, but like now my backdrop is a lot more noticeable because it's being hit with a lot more light. So part of the process is giving yourself some grace to say, I know what the ideal is. This is what I have for now, and being okay with it. And also trusting that as time and money allow, that you will continue to evolve it and upgrade it. And also be willing to experiment. I mean, half of the time I'm doing self-tapes, before I had access to a studio like this, it was a lot of like, I'm pressing start on my camera, I'm standing here, I'm checking my eye lines, and I go back and I go back and I hit play. And I do that 30 times going, no, I need to step forward. No, my eye lines, like I would do that because I didn't have another person in the room to
I'm
show that for
adjusting the light
myself
on my ring light. Yeah, that's definitely me. That is the
all
struggle.
day long, right? And
Especially,
so sometimes
when you live in a house with non-actors and you like people don't know what
you
you're
don't get
looking for. So in addition to trying to find the right setting yourself, you're also having to talk people through
Mhm.
finding the right setting when,
Yeah,
you may not even really fully
know what that is. Yeah.
right.
I will say, if it's helpful, a lot of the people I know who have built a semi-permanent setup in their home space, they'll use like painter's tape on the ground or in various places so that they can say, this is where I always set my tripod, or this is where I'll always put my
Yes.
feet. They start creating these little cheats for themselves. Like, I'm going to put a post-it note where my eye line is always going to be. And so sometimes that's what you got to do until you've got more space to play with or more time to explore it. It's just be like, great, I know if I set it here, then it's always going to be there, and I don't have to, stop and go to check. Obviously, if you have a camera where you can like look at the view, you open up that monitor and then you're able to see, that's really nice. But oftentimes this back camera is actually a lot stronger than this front camera. So unless you have the latest iPhone, and then the cameras are about the same, but most of the time we don't use this kind of camera because watching yourself can be so distracting if you're trying to be in the moment and connected. So you kind of have to do that trial and error of like, I'm going to hit record, and I'm going to stop. I'm going to hit record, I'm going to stop, and I'm just going to watch. And I troubleshoot that before I run my scene, because what I don't want to do is have a beautiful take that I was like, God, that was it. And then I go play back and I was like, oh, I stepped out of frame. Oh, my eye line was like way off. Like, I don't want to waste a really good take on that nonsense. So a lot of the time I set those eye lines. If there's some business I'm going to do, if I'm going to enter the scene, if I'm going to pick something up, if there's some kind of prop that they've asked me to use, I practice that stuff without text, just kind of walk through like, you enter, and then I'm on my phone, and then I look up, and then I go, you need to leave. And I kind of talk through the scene for myself while it's recording. And then I watch that and see if all that stuff lines up, if I need to fix anything. And I set that stuff before I run my scene for real. That's just me. I think everyone do what works for you, but I tend to advise that you kind of work that stuff out first.
But that's incredibly smart. And so we have two questions. One from our head honcho, Mandy
Yeah.
Jo.
Yes.
Is it okay to use the front facing camera?
It can be. Like I said, it depends on your phone. I know I've got an iPhone 8 Plus, and I know for a fact that this front camera is not as good as this camera. So I don't do it. I also know that if I'm getting to read with a reader, it's more important that I have a connection with my scene partner than I'm looking at myself. So I personally don't like using, as much as it would save me time, it drives me nuts. It would save me time to have that front facing camera, but I don't like being pulled out of my scene because I'm checking myself out and how I look. Because realistically in the scene, it's not going to be there. I'm not going to have that monitor of myself there. It takes me out, and I feel like there's lights, there's so many things that can take you out that I don't like having it. I think if you're in a pinch and you're like, hey, this is what I need and I don't have time, and or my camera's set up right to the back of the wall and I literally can't get around to see it. So you do what you got to do. And for the most part, at least with iPhones and even some of the Android phones, the cameras are so good. You don't need a 4K camera. Yes, this one does 4K, this one doesn't, but the files will be way too big if you're using 4K anyway. You just need that like 1080 by whatever it is, standard framing, and that's usually fine. So
Okay, so let's ask a giveaway question, and then we'll pivot to Mika's question from the YouTube comments. So the second giveaway question is, what casting sites are most helpful to a Southeast actor?
I love it.
And now we will also answer Mika's question, which is, do directors care if the background is a fabric as opposed to a wall?
Great question. Generally, okay, two things. One is everybody's different. So anytime we get questions about like casting directors or directors wanting things and preferences, it's like, I could tell you something and then somebody's going to be like, well, actually, I feel this. Because at the end of the day, people are people first, and then they're casting directors and directors. So anytime you've got people, you're going to have different preferences, and that's going to happen. But that said, generally, no. The goal of the background is that you are the focus. So if the background is doing its job and you are the focus, we're not actually going to notice if it's fabric or if it's a wall or if it's paper. We're just not going to notice, because that's the job, is for it to not be noticeable and not to pull our focus. So I've used this one's paper, I've used painted walls, and I've used fabric collapsibles, like, and all of it at the end of the day should read the same. And if it's not, if you're like, wow, I can see all these like fuzzy lint balls, or like, wow, I can see these like weird wrinkles in the curtain, then you're like, then it's probably just not doing its job. Or you can, do some work to like steam it or figure out how to straighten it out. But hopefully that answers that question.
It does. And so now we are looking for the answer to the giveaway question. But let's go ahead, and you were talking about, you had touched briefly on sound in self-tape. So let's, and Mika followed up by saying she often finds it difficult to use the rear-facing camera when she's by herself. Do you have any tricks for that?
Yeah, I think other than setting some marks for yourself to be like, okay, this is the wall I always use, this is the piece of tape I always stand on, this is the piece of tape that I always put my tripod on, like other than setting those things up so that there's a little bit less troubleshooting, I personally, and maybe I'm just overly finicky, I tend to focus on details maybe too much, but I do that trial and error of like, I'm going to press record, I'm going to record 20 seconds, I'm going to hit stop, I'm going to play it back. I do that still to this day. It's annoying and it's unfortunate, but I feel like it is way easier than the alternative, which is like, I'm just going to roll a take and hope that it's good. And then in the middle of the take, you're like, it was a really great take, but now it's not usable because you stepped out of frame or because it didn't work. So I think the best thing you can do is set some tape and some guidelines for yourself so that once you do find that sweet spot in your framing, you're like, I got it. You can even put a piece of tape on your tripod for how high it needs to be at that eye line. And then, and if you don't have a friend who can like see what it's supposed to be, then yeah, I think it's annoying, but I still feel like it only will take 10 minutes of that troubleshooting, and then you can do your tape, and maybe it's a 2-minute scene and you can do a couple tapes, and that way you can just focus on the acting. Because I find that unless you've got a coach or a reader who like knows how to act, it's really, really hard to do your best work if you're constantly thinking like, oh, don't want to step out of frame, like, oh, don't want to put my head up too high because of my angle, or don't want to misstep out of my, like, if you're thinking about those things, it's really hard to drop in and focus on the work and doing your job, which is like being a human reacting to another human trying to get your intention, right? So I find I like just getting that stuff, that tech and troubleshooting first, even if it is a little bit annoying, and I'm very sorry. And then hopefully getting yourself some standards and some tape on places where you need it so that you don't have to work as hard every single time you tape.
Okay, so another a comment from YouTube. Are you familiar with the Moodcaster app, Claire?
I am not. What is it?
Okay,
tell me more.
That is an app that was suggested by a viewer on YouTube. So viewer, if you could please give us some additional information on Moodcaster to
I've heard of,
help us discuss.
I know I've heard of things like, sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I was gonna say, I've heard of things like We Audition, and I know that there are a lot of apps circulating. So this is, I guess, a useful conversation or topic to unpack, which is that it used to be that it was unacceptable to not have an in-person reader for your self-tape. That used to be like, you need to have a human. We want to hear a human. There's a lot of lag. We have virtual readers. Your connection is different. If you pre-record yourself, that's really, really bad. And it used to be just like a blanket, like casting directors hate that. Nowadays, in our COVID world, it's like casting directors are all of a sudden like, well, I guess we can't really care about this thing because people aren't safe to be out, and not everybody's like immune systems and abilities allow for that. So now there are these apps and stuff where people can have readers read, reading sides with them, and it sometimes these apps will record you as well, and or you can get someone who records their sides or various things. So those things do exist and they are useful. You have to deal with things like how good is your internet and lag time and stuff. So we know that it's not ideal, but sometimes you're like, hey, I'm on the road, staying at a hotel on the way to my next gig, and I can't tape anywhere. So this is how I'm doing it. And I'm phone calling my sister, and, and that's totally okay. I will say that the best priority is getting a real life human The next priority is getting a live Zoom, Skype, whatever call. And the least thing that we never want to really ever do is have like pre-recorded stuff. It's really hard to be reactive and in the moment with your text if you're like literally waiting for your pre-recorded voice to play.
Yeah.
And then you have to time out exactly how you're going to say the line, because if you play at all, then all of a sudden you're overlapping text. So that's the one thing that we always try to discourage people from doing, because it's really hard to be alive and in the moment against a recording. It's really challenging.
So then if you don't have a reader, or if you are immunocompromised and cannot, justify or support having a reader present to do these auditions, what is a reasonable substitution for that?
So the Zoom call first, or like the Facebook call or Skype or however you're reaching people, I think ideal. I know some people who have done a phone call even where they're like, well, we just need the audio. I don't actually need the video part. So I know some people who've literally just been like, I'm setting up my camera and then on my computer, I'm phone calling somebody through my computer or vice versa. So I think that's the ideal. I know some people who have done things like, I'm going to pre-record my voice and I'm going to insert it, but it's just so much work in the edit. And it's just, I don't know. There are times where I would say it would depend on the role. But I feel like if I couldn't find a human to read with me, even virtually, that I would personally sooner decline the audition or wait see if I could get an extension, get an extra day when I could find a reader. I would sooner do that than I would try to work with my own pre-recorded voice, because I do think it is something that is noticeable for the casting director. And I do think it's going to not lead to my best work and my most grounded work if I'm trying to time out everything I say to fit within the 20 seconds I have before the next line comes. But I think, like anything, we always kind of encourage folks, like, you got to go with your gut. It's your business to do what works for you. So I think there's lots of rules and there's lots of standards, and you always have permission to break them as you see fit, as long as you're conscious of why you're breaking them and how you're breaking them, and it's not getting in the way of your best work. So if you can go like, I am a whiz sound editor, I can mix, I can do all these things, and I can make it happen, and I go, okay, like, go for that. Like, I'm not going to tell you not to. So I think at the end of the day, it's really about doing what's best for you and being aware when you are breaking rules and knowing the risk that inherently entails. But if you know it and you're like comfortable with doing that, then yeah.
So I am not a great sound editor, and I think that's a great segue into fixing sound for self-tapes. But before we do that, we have Mika in the comments who suggested or asked about the Moodcaster app. It's a self-taping app. And you can enter scripts or hire a reader there, or you can use a friend. If you use a friend, you get a code and the friend can log into your session, so you can hear them in real time without delay. They appear in the circle at the top of your screen and it records your takes, saves to your phone, or you can edit it in the app and then send directly to casting. So that's the whole thing that I didn't know existed.
Like we audition, I think, is the same sort of setup where you can get paired with readers or choose your reader, and that's like a whole thing. So it's basically an app service that provides that to you without, if you're struggling to find a reader, or if you have someone and you can't be there with them, and this does this and helps you to do that in real time. So that's great.
Let's go ahead and segue to sound. We still do not have an answer to our most recent question, which is on the banner at the bottom of the broadcast. If you, just in case you've forgotten it, the question is, what sites are most helpful to Southeast actors? Please feel free to answer that in either Facebook, YouTube, or Instagram comment section so that we can give you free stuff.
Yeah, free
All right,
stuff.
so yes, now to sound. Let's talk about fixing sound.
Yeah, so the first thing we're going to talk about is just like what the ideal is. The ideal is you're in a private space and nothing is going on outside that door. You're not in a large, I think it's the smaller the room, the better. You are better off. I mean, you can't really be in a closet per se. If you were just doing voiceover, you could, but for a self-tape, you want to be in a smaller room. You don't want to be like, wow, I'm in a gym, because you could have a gym all by yourself, but that's just so big. There's so many places for that noise to travel. So we want a space that's a little bit small, ideally carpeted, and private, so that you're not dealing with like people coming in and out, and knowing that when you're using your microphone that you have a unidirectional or one direction microphone. the multi-direction doesn't really, the thing about the way microphones work is that the more focused they are, the less background noise they get, but then you have to be a little bit closer to them. And the less focused they are, you could be farther away and it'll pick you up, but it's also going to pick up all the ambient noise. So we're kind of playing with those two things and trying to find something that's going to be as focused as we can. So in general, I say in your home, you want to find a space that's either carpeted or has a rug, or you want to lay down a blanket, because the way sound travels, it's going to bounce and reflect the way light does. So when you have those like carpets or rugs or blankets down on the ground, it's not going to do that so much. You don't have to deal with that ambient noise quite so much. I've been in spaces where we go, okay, you've got two bookcases, like put a blanket over one, put a blanket over the other. Now you've got some soundproofing without having to soundproof. We have in our studio soundproofing tiles in our ceiling and in the walls. We've done a lot of work so that when you close the door, it's like, and it really does feel like, wow, we've got focused silence in our spaces. But in your home spaces, you're probably not going to have that. So it's really okay to use kind of what you got around you to find a space. I think about like, if I'm using a space where I'm not using the windows, I always close the curtains and close the blinds if I'm using my own lighting, because that glass is something that sound can reflect off of. So by putting those blinds down and closing those curtains, I'm giving myself yet another layer between that and the outside. So for me, closing all of those anytime there's fabric, like I can just like kind of cocoon myself, and it helps with all of that ambient sound. And part of it is also just being mindful of what your apartment or home neighborhood life is like, and being cognizant when you do your schedule, like your taping, so that you're avoiding those things. Let me see if there's anything else. Oh, another thing is like really making sure you're turning off your fan or air conditioning unit. It's hard in Florida. I go to tape and I the last thing I do is turn off my air conditioning. I do all of my checks. I do all of my troubleshooting. And then when I'm ready to do my take, I go, okay, turning off the air conditioning. And then I get my tapes in hopefully within like 30 minutes or an hour. And then afterwards I'm like, before it gets too hot. And then I'm like, oh, gotta, and sometimes I forget. And then I was like, why is it 9 o'clock and I'm boiling? And I was like, oh, I forgot to turn the air conditioning back on after my taping. So that's another thing, is that we can hear that. It's also why we don't really do a lot of taping anywhere in like bathrooms or near kitchens. I don't know if any of you've been on set, but anytime I've been on a film set anywhere near those kinds of spaces, they're always like, can we unplug the fridge? Because those things make sound. Mm-hmm. So if you are in a space where you're like, I can be on a room that's next to the kitchen versus a room that's not, then I always pick the one that's not.
That's not.
Sometimes you're, again, we're triaging lesser of two evils, so you do what you got to do. And I
actually watched a self-tape of a friend who was, how it's very common for actors to record and post like self-tape bloopers or outtakes. And a friend of mine captioned it "Death by AC" when she was in the middle of a really good take, and then the AC came on. It was just like,
yeah. And also, like, it's also why you have to really like make sure all your devices are on silent and your alarms, and talk to the humans that you cohabitate with about their lives, because those are the things that, like, there is some stuff, and we have a blog post that I think Mandy shared about how to edit specifically your sound and the details of that, because that's a longer process. But there are softwares that can do a little bit of work with like either emphasize vocal enhancing, so that anything that's not your voice gets a little dampened, or kind of lowering some of the background noise and minimizing that. The main thing to be aware of is that the larger your edit, the more it's going to sort of distort the sound. So if I dampen ambient noise by 15%, that's probably fine. It's going to take care of some of that. If I go, I'm going to dampen background noise by 100, now my actual voice is going to get really distorted, and it's not going to be useful. So there are some things you can do in post, but if you've ever been on a film set saying, oh, I'll fix it in post, it's like ultimately the best thing that you can do is just get a really good take in the first place. So those are sort of the things to think about. It's like you want to have a smaller space, using your phone's built-in microphone or a little plug-in if you have one, You want to avoid being anywhere like outside. You want to be in somewhere that's controlled, has four walls, has a door. Because sometimes we're in spaces where well, this is like hall that kind of works. I'm like, no, you want the door. And you want to avoid any place that has like lots of tile kitchens and bathrooms and or shared spaces and that kind of a thing.
So what are suggestions for plug-in mics? Since you mentioned that.
Yeah.
Like, do you have any that you prefer?
Yeah, we've got a couple in our gear guide that you can check out. That's been posted in our links. We have our nice like Rode mics that we plug into our DSLR cameras here in the studio. But with the like iPhones and stuff, there's some good, I think it's the MV8A. It's like a mini version of a Rode mic, but it's in our gear guide. And it's one of those like plugs directly into your camera. It's monodirectional. I think it's like $50. And then there's another one that's a little bit more pricey. That's like 130. But both of them are nice and portable and can adapt to your phone really well. Some people really like using lav mics, and you can get some really inexpensive ones that are like literally lapel mics that attach. I personally don't like them because of the cords are always so short that it really limits your mobility in the scene. Also, unless you have one for your reader, it can be a challenge with you being mic'd, but your reader not being mic'd at all. And the other thing to think about is like, there are some beautiful podcasting mics that are out there, but like do not use them for self-tapes because we've talked about this monodirectional thing, but the more directional the microphone, the closer you actually have to be for it to pick you up. So those beautiful Yeti and AT2020 podcasting mics are great, but you literally have to be this close for you to get good sound. And you can't have a microphone in the middle of your frame. And the moment you start doing this and get it out of frame, it's not going to have that beautiful sound.
And then it picks up a lot of ambient sound as well.
And then it's going to pick up everything else. So that's the thing to sort of think about. But a lot of that is built into both our gear guide and we've got a couple of blog posts about sound that have links to some devices and things that you can check those guys out. Yeah.
Okay. And we just got an Instagram winner for the last trivia question. At Jade Performs, answered Actors Access and Backstage. So good job. Congrats, Jade. You are a winner, or Jade Performs. You are a winner of a free 15-minute book from tape coaching session. And from there, we talked about you giving a little tour of the studio. Before we do that, so that we're gonna wrap this AMA up with a tour of the Book from Tape Studios to give you a little bit of a walkthrough of what their studio looks like, what you can expect from a session with Book from Tape, as well as before we do that, I want to shameless plug our musical theater anatomy program that we are putting on in conjunction with a number of incredible writers, choreographers, musical theater entertainers who have extensive resumes, who have partnered with us on this program that we are offering to Black and Indigenous women who are interested in learning how to write and create a musical. And that deadline is actually today. So if you have not submitted and you're interested in it, please do not self-reject. Don't say, oh, I waited this long, because you don't have to be an experienced writer. You just have to want to learn. And that's what we're looking for this. And we really want to be about our mission of supporting Black and Indigenous and women of color in these endeavors and making our voices heard in this industry to make it more equitable for all of us. So if you are interested in the musical theater anatomy program, please, 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 please message us at Black Theater Girl Magic, either on Facebook or on Instagram or via email, blacktheatergirlmagic@gmail.com. Theater is the English spelling, THEATRE. With any questions that you may have, but submit, please, just submit. You miss 100% of the auditions and submissions that you don't submit for. So please give us the privilege of getting to know you by submitting for this program, because it's gonna be so wonderful. I'm really, really excited about it, and we need more of our voices to be present and prevalent in this industry. All right, so now that I've done that plug, let's go ahead and get this tour underway.
Yeah, I'm all for that. I love plugs like that. Those are the best kind of plugs, giving away free things for people who absolutely deserve to be represented and have training and voice in this community, I'm all for that. So yay. I am on my laptop, so it's going to be a little different. You won't see my face. It's probably going to be me turning it around and walking around the space, but like, let's go on an adventure together.
Let's
so let
do
me
it.
start. Let me start by turning on this light so you can see the space that I've been recording in. So here is one of our taping rooms. It's been very modified to adjust for the fact that I've been sitting. But like Jordan said, we've got a hair light, we've got 2 different kinds of paper for backdrops. We've got all of these soundproofing panels on the walls. We've got lots of box lights, a monitor for us to watch. This is our DSL Canon 80D camera and our Rode mic. These plexiglass puppies have been installed so that when people have to remove their masks during self-taping, they feel like they've got an extra layer of protection between us, the reader, and themselves. And yeah, this is like, and then I don't know if you can see, but on the ceiling here are these blue tiles, and they're soundproof tiles, so they're extra thick. So in here, it's a really tight space. And of course, we've got carpet because we want to avoid all of the sound bouncing. But that's one of our taping rooms. I'm going to move over here. We've got this warm-up space. Sometimes actors, let me see if I can find the light. Sometimes actors, you come in for an audition and you're like, I want to stretch, I want to breathe, I want to get myself focused. And so just like in a Disney call where you're like, I'm going to go stretch in my space, you can kind of go into the space and grab a mat and go stretch or go listen to some music or whatever you need to do before. This is one of the smaller rooms that we use for classes if we have small classes, or if we're doing private coaching and we don't need to use the taping setup, we'll pop in there. This is another one of our coaching spaces. This is our library coaching space. We've got a bunch of acting books. So anytime you want to come in and borrow a play or a book about acting, you can kind of come over and visit and hang out and read. And then this is a little bit of a larger space so that when we're doing some of our group class work, we've got a space where students can move and do physical exploration work without having to deal with all the taping stuff. But yeah, so like this is our beautiful library space. This is our main room. It's enormous and we love it. When you enter our space, we have this, I mean, we just opened the studio in March, so it's kind of like the floors are new, we've painted everything, like we've put our blood, sweat, and tears into it. But what we like is like, this is the area that before you go to tape, you can sit on a chair and hang out and wait. These cubbies are here, so it's got personal items as a student if you're in classes, or if you just want to drop your junk off before you go tape, that's what these cubbies are for. But this is like the waiting space before you step into our taping rooms. But it's also one of our favorite classroom spaces, because what we usually do is we'll move all the chairs to the side and we have these beautiful floors that we can use we do a lot of physical work. We're big theater people. So we really like doing movement and physical exploration. We use a lot of viewpoints in the bond and physical training. So we love having like wooden floors that we can really physically stretch out and move in and use the expansiveness of our space. You've sort of seen Jordan's setup. Our second taping room is essentially exactly the same. You'll have 2 different color paper choices, but the same camera. Like I said, it's been modified for our AMA today, so it's a little busier with stuff sprinkled around. And of course, we've got a bunch of like masks and sanitizer and thermometers and stuff, because we're in a COVID world. So that's a big piece. It's like when you enter, you get your temperature checked, and nobody's in here right now, so I'm mask free. But once someone shows up, I immediately mask on, and we do all of those things. And then this is sort of our backstage space, but this is where we do all of our editing. Jordan has his desk and I have mine, and all of our brochures of our programming, but this is where we do editing, where we have staff meetings, we have a fridge, our copy printer.
So that's where the magic happens.
Magic happens. It's also like really nice. We like these computer spaces too, because we often get coaching where we're looking over headshots with people, or we're looking over people's website or resume or content. So it's nice to have a place. There's lots of chairs where people can kind of sit across the desk, and we can kind of have a consult and have a really large, MacBook screen to look through and to like look over everyone's content. And our last little room is still sort of being built, but is being used. And we've just started our voiceover department. So we have
Oh, nice.
a voiceover mic and editing software and a lot of soundproofing panels and like a booth. And then we've got, kind of tucked in, we've got a lot of panels. This is just like a corner of soundproof panels so that you can like 360 be surrounded by soundproofing.
Well, and from what I understand about sound is corners are where you get the most bounce back of sound. So if you have limited soundproofing materials, it's best to hit the corners first.
Yeah, or like that's why I love anytime I have a voiceover audition, I'm like in my walk-in closet because I'm like, wow, these clothes really serve as like buffer to all that sound bouncing. And Adam Vernier is our voiceover coach, and we're still continuing to develop what that looks like. We have private coaching for voiceover right now, but we're looking ahead for 2021, having like voiceover classes and having a lot more sort of in-person offering for that, because right now it's been all virtual. So that's something we're really excited to continue to develop. But yeah, that's pretty much our space. Other than that, we have like an entryway where you can take a photo in front of our step and repeat. But other than that, like that's like, let me see if I can get it. Here's our little step and repeat that you can take a picture in front of. But yeah, that's like when you show up, that's how you enter our little Book from Tape studio space. Yeah, we're really excited about it. And we're excited to like see humans again face to face, because it's been so virtual for so long. So things are just now happening where people are like, okay, we need to be taping, and the industry is opening up a little bit, little by little. So we are here, and we're here to like continue that conversation and trying to continue to do everything physically possible to make sure everyone feels comfortable and safe, and really doubling down on hand sanitizer and all of the things to make sure that everything feels good to go. Yeah.
Well, your studio is absolutely lovely, and voiceover actors, now you know you have another place that you can go to get professional quality recording services. So thank you so much for being here with us today, Claire. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for your thoroughness and being so detailed with the information and the blog posts and everything. We really, really appreciate it. We know a lot of our members and a lot of people are going to benefit from the information that you shared here today. So we're truly grateful. But before we go, can you let everybody know how to find and more information about Book from Tape and the services that you offer? And with that, we'll go ahead and close out.
Yeah. So our website is bookfromtape.com. So that's the easiest place if you want to either book an audition, taping with us, or a coaching, or a resume, or website, or any other the services that we do. You can check that out. And then our emails, I think I put it in the chat somewhere, but it's Jordan@bookfromtape.com or Claire@bookfromtape.com. So it's really important to us that anybody who's worked with us as a student or taped with us, that if you have any questions, if something comes up in the industry and you're like, hey, what do I do? Like, please shoot us an email. Our inboxes are always open. We'd say drop by anytime, but we understand that right now it's harder to travel out to places, and that's okay. But our goal here is that once things are safe to be fully open, that we have a space that you could drop by anytime and just hang out and read a play and commiserate with your fellow actors who are taping, and get to have those like opportunities to connect and network and have build community in that way. But in the meantime, we got email, so please reach out. We're always happy to be a resource, and we really love supporting actors. Jordan and I are working actors. Like we do this with our life, and we're very grateful to be connected to this acting community here in Central Florida and beyond. So thank you.
All right. Thank you so much again for your time. Thank you so much for being here with us and helping actors, theatrical and otherwise, learn more about the fine art and science of self-taping.
Yay. Awesome. Thanks for having me.
All right. So, and if you're watching at home, which most of you are, please feel free to join us for the next in our series of Ask Me Anything installments and episodes, if you will. More information on that to come, but we look forward to seeing you. We really enjoy doing this, providing resources to you all, because that's what BTGM is all about. So thank you for joining us, and we hope to see you again.
Bye.